is World News with Charles Gibson.
Good evening. 2 weeks ago, the CEOs of the big three American automakers came to Washington saying they needed a bailout. Congress was unimpressed and said, go back to Detroit, come up with a plan. How much money do you really need? What would you use it for? Show us you really plan to change the way you do business. Well, today those plans were presented to Congress against a backdrop of auto sales numbers for November that were announced today, and the numbers were ugly. Ford down 31%, GM down 41%, Chrysler down 47%. So Chris Bury reports tonight from Chicago. Chris?
Good evening, Charlie. Those dismal sales figures underscore the dire straits Detroit is in. And tonight, a top GM executive warned there is no plan B. Without help, the company will default in the near term.
This time, auto executives are driving hybrids to Washington. Instead of flying in fancy corporate jets, they come bearing glossy new plans to justify all that taxpayer money.
They really need to show Congress that they are prepared, that they're viable, and that they really need this money.
General Motors, on the brink of failure, is asking for up to $18 billion, including $4 billion just to make it through this month. GM promises to build 15 hybrids. It also plans massive cost-cutting, up to 30,000 workers, 9 plants, 1,700 dealers. It would sell or downsize Pontiac, Saturn, Saab, and Hummer, focusing on 4 core brands: Chevrolet, GMC, Buick, and Cadillac.
They need to show that they have cut all the way to the bone, that they made every effort to find every possible dollar.
Ford, asking for a credit line up to $9 billion, now claims it can break even or better by 2011. It plans to move faster on hybrids and battery-powered vehicles. To raise cash, Ford will sell Volvo and drop more than 600 dealers. And remember when Ford's CEO got grilled about his $21 million salary?
I think I'm okay where I am.
Now, a newly humbled Alan Mullally will work for $1 a year if Ford takes any government money. Management bonuses canceled. Ford's corporate jets on the auction block.
That's largely cosmetic. What it really needs to do is to accelerate its product rollout. It's promising to do that.
Chrysler, looking for $7 billion, plans to launch 24 new products by 2012, including hybrid electric drive vehicles. It's also moving up plans to cut 25% of its workforce.
With customers not buying, with dealers not ordering, and with our plants not producing, Chrysler's cash inflow has suffered.
But none of these moves allow the big three to truly evolve, let alone survive, unless they squeeze major new concessions from union auto workers.
If they don't lower their labor costs so that they can lower their cost of production, they simply will not become viable.
Tomorrow, the UAW holds an emergency meeting to consider some new concessions, but the hard question is whether all these plans represent real change or merely a new sales pitch. Charlie?
Chris Bury reporting from Chicago tonight. Thanks to you. And the Senate will be in session next week to consider the industry request. Is Congress in a buying mood? Jonathan Karl is at the Capitol tonight. John, what's the reaction on the Hill to the plans from the automakers?
Well, Charlie, the early reaction is fairly positive. In contrast to those hearings 2 weeks ago, the big three came in with specifics and, just as important, with humility, admitting that they had made some past mistakes. But, Charlie, the bottom line is that may not be enough. Even the staunchest advocates of Detroit here on Capitol Hill say that as of right now, there just are not the votes to get this passed.
But if the votes aren't there, what's the game plan? What do supporters of aid to the auto industry plan to do to get the votes?
Well, they say that what they really need here is the active involvement of President Bush and, more importantly, President-elect Obama. They need the two of them not just supporting help for Detroit, but up here making calls and twisting arms to get it passed. And right now, that's just not happening.
And they need the CEOs of the automakers, I would suspect, to be a little bit more dynamic when they come back to the Hill at the end of this week than they were 2 weeks ago.
A repeat performance of what happened 2 weeks ago would absolutely doom this no matter what else goes on. And that's the reason, Charlie, why you're seeing these guys driving in those hybrids and not taking the corporate jets.
All right, Jonathan Karl on Capitol Hill, thanks to you. Well, today's dismal auto sales numbers